Here we go, Travis. How you doing?
I'm sitting on the edge of my seat because I think you're about to pull a fast one on me.
Well, we were going to continue our talk on what? I can't even remember what we were going to talk about.
We were going to talk about something really important, and then you sabotaged the show by calling me and insisting that we do this.
Ah,
I had nothing to do with this.
oh, you're okay. Good. Blame me. That sounds like the debate itself. All right.
Yeah,
Greetings, everybody. This is Travis and Ross on Notes On, and this is the show where we take on pretty much anything that has to do with our Christian faith, where we try to do Christ on purpose. And we were going to do something else, what we did last week, but what we're going to do this week is so interesting that I can't even remember what we were doing. This is really embarrassing.
we were talking about salvation.
Salvation, yes. Who is saved? Okay, so,
And in this case, who shall be saved from this debate?
oh my goodness. So the debate in question, many of you have probably seen it, is this debate between Dr. James Tour and Dave Farina on the subject of origin of life. And this debate goes back years. I've been watching James Tour. I've probably watched several dozen hours of his stuff over the years. He's a organic synthetic chemist who has taken it on himself to debunk um, origin of life research. He never says we're not gonna find a naturalistic pathway, but he always says we're nowhere close to finding it. And this guy named Dave Farina, who I think is an ex high school teacher, right?
I don't really know his background well enough. I know that I've heard that he
Okay.
started 2 master's degrees in the hard sciences, and for whatever reason, did not complete them. So he has a
Okay.
bachelor's degree, and he's become quite effective in at helping people, you know, in chemistry, people that want to learn chemistry or any other science. I did watch his series several years ago on flat earthism because I was interested in that. I was just fascinated by I've always been fascinated by the fact that people think the earth is flat. And he has a great series on debunking flat earthism. So I appreciated him, but I didn't really know anything about this debate between him and Tour. I haven't seen all those videos that you've watched.
Yeah, so Dave Farina took it on himself for some reason to start attacking James Tour, and Farina is not in James Tour's league. James Tour's got more degrees than you and I could name in half an hour, and Farina has a YouTube channel, and apparently it's a really good channel in a lot of ways. But Farina started attacking Jim Tour, and James Tour actually did I think a 13 or 14 part YouTube series, each part about an hour long, getting as deep into uh, bi- uh, biological chemistry as you ever want to get, telling us why Dave Farina is wrong. And this all culminated because in a debate that they did between the two of them at Rice University on Friday night. And I, Travis, you've seen the whole debate. I
Yeah,
saw half of it, and I just want to say it's the worst debate I've ever seen. And I think both sides have a lot to blame for that. What do you see? What did you see?
I agree. But when you and I were talking, the if on rhetoric, if you just go by rhetoric alone, I
De-
give
define,
Professor
def,
Dave or Dave Farina a 0, and Tour I put him at around a 2,
define
mainly
what you mean
because
by rhetoric.
by rhetorical, just the delivery of your content.
Yeah.
I'm not really talking about substance, just the delivery. How did you deliver your content? Did you do it in a ironic way? Did you bring the audience in? Did you make yourself understandable? Were you concise? Were you within time? Did you stick with the topic? Did you go off topic? The reason I give Tour a low score is because he does get rattled. That's one of the. I've never been in a formal debate, but I do know that one of the chief skills that you have to have as a debater is to keep your cool and calm, even if you're getting attacked.
Yeah.
You need to stay calm and stay focused and just deliver the content, and don't let the attacks of that person rattle. William Lane Craig is the greatest living defender of Christianity. Is one of the best debaters of our era. Just, it really doesn't matter what you're talking about. He's kind of a model for how you should conduct yourself in debate. Over prepare, be ready to go, but at no point should you allow the vitriol of your opponent affect the way you act.
Yeah.
And Tour did allow him to do that, and it's unfortunate. But I have to still give a lower score to Professor Dave. He started it. He rattled his cage. It was ad hominem attack from the get-go. He made James Tour the issue and not James Tour's position.
Yeah.
And then all throughout, he called him a liar multiple times. And he at one point looked at the audience and said that they are morons and idiots. He called them names. So he lost the audience. He acted like a child. James Tour, I will say, is I'm criticizing him too. He didn't act a whole lot better, but I can understand why James Tour gets rattled. He broke debate protocol, but it's like, what would you do in that situation? I don't know if I would have acted better. When your integrity is attacked like that, it can be unnerving. Now on substance, I give Tour about a 6 or a 7, and I give Dave Farina a 0.
Yeah.
Because we're about to see a clip, and Farina, all he does is read from papers, but he doesn't really go into the substance of those papers. But we'll talk about some of this later. Before we show the clip, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to say there's a lot of lessons in this. And as Christians, when we're going to talk about a subject, first of all, know it as well as you possibly can. And number 2, like you said, don't lose your cool. Jim Tour, a lot of the time he was calm, but he lost it several times. And he wasn't like yelling at him, but he was talking over him and not regarding him. And yet I don't know what I would do, because Dave Farina called him stupid. He told him once he pulled something out of his A. He used the F word. Where do you go when you're in a debate and the other side is simply calling you a liar? How do you make your point? I don't know the answer to this. I really felt bad for James Tour. The whole video is really great theater if that's what you want.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have blamed James Tour if he'd have just, calmly got up and walked over to the other side and punched him out.
Right.
Because he really attacked him personally. You're right. He never really answered James Tour's arguments, because I don't think he can. But man,
and this is not a claim that James Tour is right. On neither point am I either rhetorically or substantively does this prove that James Tour is right.
Right. I think he is, because
I tend to agree with him, but who am I? I am my field is here.
Right.
I failed high school chemistry. I mean I'm a moron when it comes to a lot of this stuff. And I depend on the experts to guide me. So I don't claim competence to judge the substance. I hope I've learned a little bit since high school, but I don't claim competence to speak with any kind of expertise on this. However, having said that, I know what good arguments look like. I know how to analyze them, and I also know what debate looks like. If you don't answer your opponent's contention, then you have effectively conceded the point. And if you eat up all your time attacking your opponent's character, then you're not going to have a whole lot of time to actually show where exactly he's wrong. So
I think that Farina had a lot of people in the audience that were on his side, that maybe they're his groupies and follow him around.
Yeah.
And so I think he's always going to be able to go back and say that he won. So I don't know that I don't know that that way of looking at it is completely accurate. I think 2 years from now and 5 years from now, I think you're right. People will look back on this and say, you know, who is this guy? He was completely out of his league. But right now he's probably going to get another 100,000 viewers and a bunch more clicks and make a lot more money on YouTube. And that's the
Yeah.
sad part. The sad part of this is it's really hard to watch this debate after watching it as much as I have. I kind of know the history. It's really hard to watch this debate and not feel really cynical about Dave Farina. It just feels like he knows he's wrong, but he's just calling names and making a great theater out of it because he knows,
Right.
he can take an extra, European vacation because of this. And so,
Well, look, here's one way to look at it. If you're an atheist and you happen to be watching these two guys, jabber on like two monkeys in a tree, the way we're doing right now, if you're an atheist and you're watching us, you may get a little incensed and say, "Well, you guys are lying." Okay, well, imagine that you showed up at a debate and it doesn't matter what is Christianity true, and it's a Christian versus an atheist. And the guy who's representing the Christian apologist stands up and he basically just preaches to the atheist and says, the only reason you don't believe is because you're a sinner in the hands of an angry God and you're going to hell.
right.
Now, how would that make you feel? Obviously, it would not make you feel good. And you would automatically be isolated from the speaker, and you wouldn't really want to give Christianity a good hearing. Now, just imagine that's exactly what Dave Farina did to his audience. He could have shown up and he could have very substantially walked through in detail the substance of those papers he kept citing and said, this is exactly why. But he basically skims over the papers and just goes right to ad hominem and basically says, you're a liar. You're a religious person. Religious people have to make a choice. He basically has said, I think on his videos, religious people have to make a choice. You either be a person of faith or a person of science. You can't be both.
Yeah.
And so basically you're saying that the Christian world cannot engage in the scientific enterprise. Now, let's say that that's true. You're not going to win people over by arguing the way you argued. So I did listen to a couple of atheists do a rehash of this debate, and I watched about an hour of it, and they were pretty harsh on Dave Farina as well. So I hope what's going to happen with all of this is that
Good.
many in the atheist community are going to be turned off. As much as we Christians might be critical of James Tour, we can put ourselves in his position, at least be sympathetic. But I can't imagine anyone being moved towards atheism or away from Christianity as a result of this debate. If anything, it'd just be the opposite. So to whatever degree it was a setback for Christian apologetics, it was an even greater setback, I think, rhetorically speaking, for atheism.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Why don't you play a clip, Travis, and
Sure.
so people can get a feel for this, and then we'll keep talking.
Here we go. This is Professor Dave has just given his opener, and they're about to do their first prompt.
We now turn to Dr. Tour, who will ask a question.
One of the things that we have to make in order to have life are polypeptides, where we take amino acids and these amino acids have to couple. And when they couple, it will form a dipeptide.
By the way, critics have attacked him for doing this. I thought this was actually a pretty good move.
This dipeptide
part.
is one of thousands and thousands and thousands that would have to form. If you were going to make a polypeptide, you'd need at least 100 of these for a very small polypeptide. Mr. Farina, show me the prebiotic chemistry that would do this coupling. Be my guest.
Okay. Yeah, I don't need the board. So this was my second prompt. So I guess we'll circle back to this. But yeah, you keep going. Show me the references in your content. But so you're missing a mountain of research, literally a mountain of research that demonstrates this. So here's one: condensation of amino acids to form peptides in aqueous solution. So we've got sulfur 4 oxidative monomer. Carbonyl sulfide mediated prebiotic formation of peptides. There's another one.
That does not do it, and the two you showed do not do it. This is called asparagine, DK. They do not do it with these.
Okay, so what is Lehman's a fraud? Gadiri's a fraud? Are you calling them fraud? They published a paper, carbonyl sulfide mediated prebiotic formation of peptides. So if you're saying they didn't do that, you're
show me the example in there. I studied this. I looked over every paper you put up.
Have never studied anything in this area. Are you kidding me? All you do is go, show me the papers, and then I show you papers. Here, let's see if I can find that one exactly.
Yeah, show me the one exactly that does this in a prebiotic fashion. Show me. It's not there. Okay. I'm asking you to come up and show me the chemistry.
James, I don't need to write on the board. I brought actual papers. This is actual research.
Okay, show me the paper. Show me in that paper this example. Okay, this is called.
This is the one you wanted.
Aspartic acid.
James.
This is called lysine.
James, look. This is the Gadiri paper. Here's the scheme. You want to go through that?
But
aqueous room temperature, you get oligopeptides. Okay, and it jumps to 80% yield with prebiotic oxidizing agents.
But not with this, because what happens is this would participate. This would
participate.
participate.
You want to do the side chain thing? Okay, well we got research for that too.
Of course, I'm speaking to the side chain. This is not glycine. That's not prebiotically relevant. That has nothing to do with prebiotic.
Okay, how about this one?
That sulfur compound was made separately in dichloromethane using HOBT, which is a coupling agent designed by human beings for solid phase synthesis. That's how they made the
Are you saying sulfur is not available prebiotically? It doesn't matter what solvent they use.
No, HOBT was the compound, that SH compound that you just showed was made in a separate reaction. That was in a separate reaction, and he describes that.
Okay.
I can show you in the paper.
Thank you. If you don't like that one, how about this Powner one? Powner jacks regioselective peptide formation. Acylated aminonitrile.
Right.
Wait, hold on. I got the scheme here.
It's not in there. You're going to look and look. It's not in there. I studied every one of your papers. Powner doesn't even use amino acids. He uses an
aminonitrile.
Aminonitrile.
That's a totally different paper.
Amino acid.
James, that's not the same paper. You're talking about a different paper.
There is no coupling.
Look, he got coupling with lysine, regioselective
pausing?
lysine ligation, the most selective peptide ligation that.
Right.
See, the problem here is just the whole setup. There's not, 1/10 of 1% of people who can follow this debate.
Right.
And
did I lose you?
that's part of the problem with the whole thing is not talking about, neither one are talking about the philosophy of origin of life or making the argument in a way that most people are going to understand it. They're talking prebiotic chemistry in the most minute form. And who's going to understand this? You're going to wind up believing the person that you like the best. I don't know the answer to that. It's a really hard thing. But Dave Farina said to him, "You've never read anything in this field." He said that.
Yeah.
What do you do when you're debating and your opponent says something like that? It's really egregious.
Well, a little bit later, I think in the same sequence, and we don't have to play it word because of time and all that, but he literally stops mid-sentence because he's trying to find the section in the paper. And he stops mid-sentence and goes, "Well, you're just lying."
Right.
You know? And here's what I think that they obviously came with two different agendas. I think Tour came to dialogue. I think Dave came to crucify.
Yeah.
And but beyond that, what Farina, and I hate to say, I don't know how to say this. I was at a RTV conference call today, and I asked some of the scientists if this is true, because they've some of the guys that I was talking to published, and they're just knee deep in this. I said, I don't read the peer reviewed literature in the sciences to speak of. I said, but having written a book myself and having talked to people about these kinds of things, the title of even a peer-reviewed paper is sometimes not even what the author himself or herself chose. And sometimes even scientists in peer-reviewed literature will put a fairly provocative title in, not because they're trying to be dishonest, and not because they're lying, not because they're incredible, but because they're trying to give a provocative article so it makes the papers or something, and it kind of makes a splash.
Just like everything else that's online, everything. Yeah,
that's right. And so everybody, even in peer-reviewed literature, everyone knows that you can't just read the title of something and expect that you're going to get the answer. Even the abstracts themselves are sometimes not even written by the authors. And even when the author does do it, he may be summarizing in such a simplified way that he's not fully capturing the genuine content of his video. So all that has to be taken into account, and therefore to make your point, it's not enough for Farina to just read the title of an article. He's got to go in to the substance of the article and show content-wise how those chains are formed naturally. Did the scientists doing the experiment demonstrate a purely naturalistic pathway from A to B, from these prebiotic chemical compounds to a cell? Does this do it? And Tour is saying that he doesn't. The content is, I've read your paper and it doesn't do it. Now, one of the things that happens in the debate is at one point, Farina brings out a paper that they didn't agree to. So apparently in their email exchanges, Farina and Tour limited themselves to a certain number of papers. I think it was 6 or so.
I think it was the papers that they have used previously on the air in debating each other.
Okay. Now, some people complained about that. The atheists that I listened to complained about that. But if Dave agrees to it, then he agrees to it. So B, you have to stick by the agreement. And B, I understand the rationale behind the agreement. You can't just have an open-ended discussion where you do a bunch of gotchas.
Right.
So what you do is you say, okay, we're going to talk about these papers and whether these papers prove what you say they prove. Now, the atheists that were critiquing Tour said he wanted those papers so he could do these other chemicals that didn't have anything to do with the paper. And I'm like, no, that's not what he was doing. He said, okay, we're going to use those papers. I'm going to show that those papers don't prove that there's a naturalistic pathway to the origin of life, that we're even close to showing that. And so that's why he was doing this. That's why he was drawing out a chemical and all the parts of a chemical. He was drawing all of that out to illustrate the fact that this was not produced in that, and this is necessary for life.
Right.
And so that's why he was doing all of that. The other reason I think that the chalkboard thing was effective is that even though people didn't really know what he was doing, I did. I mean, I was looking like that. I was like, that looks just like a different language to me. But that's the point. He knows his stuff. And he wasn't just trying to say, well, I know my stuff. He's showing through action that he's not a fraud. He may be wrong, but he's not a liar. He's not a fraud. If he was a liar, he wouldn't display his faith on his website.
Yeah.
He wouldn't say, I'm a super Jesus guy. He started off the debate going, I'm a super Jesus guy. But I'm not letting that interfere with my conclusions here. And even if he is letting that interfere with his conclusions, let's say that Tour is self-deceived or something, all Farina has to do is show him the money, show the crowd the money. He doesn't have to insult him. He can just, almost like a teacher, sigh and say, let me walk you through this. And so he should have taken one of those papers, and instead of reading the titles of the abstracts and saying, well, I got the scheme here, what about this? What about this? He doesn't have, what he should have done is he should have blown up the paragraph that shows the chemical reaction and why it proves what Tour says it doesn't prove, and says there, right there, it does it. Now, at that point, the audience may have still been a little lost, but now we would have had substance, and you would have seen a real clash on the substance there. And that would have been, I kind of like it when two experts are talking way over my head, and I know it's important, and I'm trying to lift myself up so I can keep up with the conversation. I actually like that sort of thing. I love that. Up that, and I will hit rewind. I'm speaking as a child of the 80s with a cassette tape, but I'll be hitting, repeat, so I can watch that over and over. And what the hell are they talking about? I like that sort of thing. I didn't get it here because Farina kept just jumping from paper to paper going, you haven't read this literature, you're lying. And it was a beautiful moment was lost in this debate. And I blame Farina far more than I blame Tour.
I agree. And, one thing I want to say, kind of stepping back and looking at it, Travis, the Bible says that we're going to bring people to Christ, not so much by the arguments we make, but by the love we have in our heart and the loving attitude that we have towards people.
Sure.
And I'm not saying, I know James Tour's heart. I've watched him enough. I know where he's at, but he did not come across like that. Yeah. And he could have won this. He could have flat out won this, not based at all on the facts, because nobody understands the facts. He could have flat out won this if he had just kept his cool and maybe chuckled a couple of times and just schooled Dave Farina and not let him get under his skin. And just, it's really interesting as human beings that we're built like this, isn't it? That we actually pay more attention to the demeanor of someone than we do to the argument. And
presidential elections are won on these kinds of things.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
I mean, one of the golden moments in 1992 that some people think cost George H.W. Bush the election was when he looked at his watch in the middle of a debate. Because it showed he didn't really care about being there. When he's all agitated, going, it doesn't say this, and then he's looking at the paper, he could have instead just very calmly said, "Okay, would you please take me to the paragraph and the section of the paper where this is performed, or something like it. It doesn't have to be just this compound, but something like it. Would you please show me?" And then he could have brought down the conversation. And if Farina interrupted him, he could have sat back and waited for him to finish and said, "Well, as I was saying initially before you interrupted me, moving on." But they began talking into each other, past each other. And I do think the moderators fell short here, as you were saying. In our talk, they should have interrupted them multiple times. And so would you guys please keep it civil?
No one in this debate came out looking good. Not
moderators, the debaters,
even the audience. Yeah.
The atheist that actually reviewed the debate, one of them was actually there, and you don't hear it on camera, but a lot of James Tour's people were shouting insults at Farina in his first speech, and they were mad, of course, because Farina was calling him a toxic individual and a liar and all that. But I got to tell you, Christians, when you go to these debates, don't do that. Do not attack the opponent of your guy. First, it's just not Christian. It just is not what Christ commanded us to do. We're to love our enemies. And so you just can't do that.
Yeah. And you know what, Travis? This is a perfect example of how bad it can get. you know, we're criticizing James Tour, but he's a passionate guy. And on the stage, people were calling him a liar, he was saying you never read anything, you don't know the field. He used the F word, he used, you know, the A word. I don't blame James Tour at all for this. But this is how everybody watched this debate. This is how it should not be done.
That's right. I wish we could say more. We might say a little bit about it next week, but
yeah,
I enjoyed talking about this with you, man. I hope the audience did too.
Yeah.
Let us know. Send some comments below and let us know what you think about our comments. And if you want us to cover this kind of content more, we'd be happy to. But I don't know. Love you, dude.
Thank you, man.
Peace out.